could come and get when your clients are asking questions. So Greg Andrews is here to give you a presentation and fill us in and get us and at least have conversations about some of it. Greg, come on up. Thank you very much. So how many of you think or would like to wager that I have a Bitcoin in my pocket right now? Nobody? I got five people, and then I got some people that laughed. Okay, the 5 of you who got laughed at, I do not have a Bitcoin in my pocket. You know why? Because Bitcoin is not a physical entity. It's a digital currency. It's not. I can put in my pocket now. Some people say, I have a Bitcoin wallet. And you think, wow, but why would you have a wallet if you can't have a physical currency? Well, the wallet is also not a physical entity. So everything we're talking about today is going to be digital, and it's going to be virtual and invisible because it has to be, right? Now let me ask you another question. If I did have my digital wallet with my digital Bitcoin in here on my laptop or accessible through my mobile phone, how many of you? Well, let me ask you a question. If I had one Bitcoin, if I owned one Bitcoin, and I don't, but if I did, how much would you give me for it? I'm going to take a couple. Let's pretend this is an auction. 8,000 what? Wow. Okay. Sweet. Anybody? Anybody? Anybody want to give me less? Anybody want to give me like $5 for it? Okay, all right. I won't give it to you for 5. Okay, so here's the thing. We've discovered just a little bit here is we have some novices in here that don't really follow Bitcoin. They don't know exactly what it is. And we have plenty of people who don't really know what it's trading at in terms of value and cost right now. So I'll be speaking to the spectrum then of the audience, which, you know, I think those of you who really know your stuff, I hope I'll say something today that'll get you even closer to being an expert. And those of you who don't know much, I think you'll get a lot out of this. I'm not sure why this mic keeps cutting out, but so I was home at Christmas last year, and my mom said, you know, you should get the boys, my nephews. So you should get the boys some of those Bitcoins. I said, yeah, sounds. Maybe I should do that, Mom. The only problem is, Mom, those Bitcoins, and this is last December. I don't know, Mom. They're going for about 20,000 a piece, and I have 11 nephews. So this is going to be a real game changer for my retirement plan. So. Anyways, a lot of people just are not plugged in on this, and we're gonna get you off the launch pad today. As we go through cryptocurrency, blockchain, and real estate, the first two being very, very connected. The latter in real estate being a new frontier for both blockchain and cryptocurrency. By the way, I know this looks like a physical thing, but it's really just a way of expressing that it somehow exists. Eric, are you here? My mic seems to keep cutting out in random places. Any idea what that is? Should I get this out of the way? Are you guys hearing me cut out? I'm hearing it up here. Okay. Let's try this. That'll be a really fun presentation for me. I was diagnosed as a hyperactive child. I'm one of 8 kids, by the way, and I'm a redhead, so I only make deals with the devil. All right, this might work. Hasn't cut out yet. All right, so I'm going to define cryptoeconomics for you because it's a bizarre word, and it's actually made up of 2 words when you break it down. The first word being cryptography, the second word being economics, and the word economics is key because that's really what differentiates cryptoeconomics and blockchain from what you guys probably remember when we were downloading music in the early 2000s through and not just music but movies through BitTorrents. Remember torrents? Remember trying to download a movie online, and there were 8 people that seeded it, and of those 8, only one had a real decent copy, and that guy had turned off his computer, so he wasn't even available to seed it to you. This is the big difference between that and that. The economics is what keeps this system alive and awake at all times, versus that old early 2000 age of downloading torrents, which was just absolutely mind-bending stuff. I really, at the time, thought it was the coolest thing, but also the most frustrating thing. Cryptoeconomics is a formal discipline that studies protocols that govern the production, distribution, and consumption of goods and services in a decentralized digital economy. That must sound ridiculous to somebody that, I don't know, died in the 1980s even, because there's a lot of words there that you have to digest. But decentralized is a huge thing because, again, if I go back to the torrent example I used, that was sort of decentralized, but it also wasn't very useful. We didn't have to go to a specific server to get that stuff. But again, this world of cryptoeconomics is always alive and awake, and that's the big difference there. So let's add that word to it. A decentralized digital economy that's always alive and awake. Cryptoeconomics is a practical science that focuses on the design and characterization of these protocols. Okay, so when we break down the word cryptoeconomics into 2 different words, cryptography, which is the conversion of data into a secret code, and you probably knew that from the word crypto, for transmission over a public network. Okay. Economics. You know this word pretty well. Economics deals with the production, distribution, and consumption of goods and services. So that's where you see the 2 sort of coming in to make this broader definition up top. Again, economics is what drives this system and keeps it alive and awake, and that's what really makes it new and different and one of a kind. Let's define cryptocurrency now, and I want to start with some broad slides here so that we don't, get too into the details yet. Cryptocurrencies, in a singular form, a digital or virtual currency in which encryption techniques are used to regulate the generation of units of currency and verify the transfer of funds operating independently of a central bank. Okay, that's the decentralized part of it as well. The encryption is obviously part of the cryptography of it. So when you see that, we started this talk off with a joke about it being a digital currency. Okay, that's not a joke anymore. You guys know that. Everyone here in this classroom, you know that now, and you know that we've used the word secret and encryption and crypto. So we are talking about things that are meant to be very secure and private. That we're leading into that. We're talking about decentralization. So we're talking about independence. We're talking about inspiring the wrath of governments and banks as they currently stand as well, but I'll touch more on that later. Where did it all come from? In October 2008, Satoshi Nakamoto, which is going to be a very interesting name as we break it down, published a paper describing the Bitcoin digital currency. In January 2009, Nakamoto released the first Bitcoin software that launched the network and the first units of Bitcoin cryptocurrency called Bitcoins. So this is obviously very new, and cryptocurrency, the idea of it, the concept, and I'll be honest with you, I wasn't totally plugged into it for a while. I remember one of my nephews who was going to Georgia Tech at the time told me about how he had bought some Bitcoin. And at the time, it was worth less than $100. But he asked me what I thought, because I'm a financial advisor, and I I told him I didn't know much, but I wanted to pretend that I knew more than I did, because he caught me at unawares. And all I could say was, it's a sham, it's a hoax, don't get involved. Be very careful. Okay, I hadn't really done my research yet. I'm not totally willing to say that it's the next. I'm absolutely not willing to say it's the next best thing since sliced bread. But I've come a long way. I see its purpose. I see its genesis, and I kind of and I understand the significance of it. More importantly, I understand the significance of the technology behind cryptocurrency, which is blockchain technology. We're going to get to that in a second. But what's funny about Satoshi Nakamoto is that we're not sure who he, it, they are. Very interesting. If you Google founder of Bitcoin, you'll see some pictures and you'll see some contradictions on who is who. But you'll see this. There actually is a guy. I'm going to go to this next slide. We'll probably show this. Yeah. Who is the real Satoshi Nakamoto? It's kind of like where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? Well, it's at possibly it's a pseudonym for a person or a group of people. And here are some of the suspects. Elon Musk. Okay. As if he doesn't have his hands in enough things these days, right? It could be a Russian or Chinese agent who are all over the news these days. It could be Satoshi Nakamoto, who is a real person, Dorian Prentice Satoshi Nakamoto. Actually, I believe he's a Californian, and he actually won some money in a settlement because it's not him. And it apparently destroyed his life, that he was accused of being the actual Satoshi. There's Craig Stephen Wright. There's David Kleiman. There's the CIA, NSA. So it's a government thing. It's Nick Szabo or it's Hal Finney. So if you want to get to know some of these guys a little more closely, you can Google them. But what's interesting is that it may be one, none, all of those people. We don't know. My guess, my bet, is that it's not one person. We'll find out sooner or later. In fact, if I understand correctly, the NSA has actually discovered the alias, although I don't believe they'll ever have to reveal that to the public. But that's at least what I've read. So that's actually, it makes it all the more mysterious. It makes it all the more crypto. That's just a fun slide for you guys. Now, blockchain technology, as I told you before, as I suggested before, is really the most significant part of all of this. Now, when let's say Satoshi's a real person. Let's just pretend he is. When Satoshi put this together, Bitcoin, it had to have a delivering technology. And I don't know that anyone knew, including Satoshi, how important blockchain would be. And really, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies pale in comparison to the power of the underlying technology. Let me tell you what that technology is I'll try to in layman's terms. Let's start with a definition, which is not as layman. A public register of digital transactions called blocks between users belonging to the same network linked using cryptography, which we discussed. Blocks are stored in a secure, verifiable, and permanent hierarchical manner, creating an endless chain of data blocks that allows for the traceability of all transactions ever made. Okay, even that's a simple definition of what it is. And I have a visual on the next page that'll give you a little better understanding of it. But just know that blockchain technology is made up of other technologies, point-to-point technology, peer-to-peer, which is we've had that for a while, right? That we had that when we were downloading the torrents back in the early 2000s, when I wanted to get a copy of Top Gun, and I didn't want to pay for it. I didn't want to go to Blockbuster, and I used peer-to-peer technology on that. Cryptography. That's another technology, if you will, that ensures the transparency and the privacy of these transactions. And then the most important, probably, in terms of how it relates economically, is game theory. Now remember how I said if there's only 8 people that have Top Gun on their computer and 7 of them are asleep, I can only get it from that one guy. That was back in the day of torrents. Well, that's because nobody was incentivized to share those torrents with me. Not really. They were just nice, or it was a very popular movie and everyone happened to have it. But the economic incentive built into cryptocurrencies, which makes cryptoeconomics, allows the people that are sharing these things with you to be paid. So in this case, the miners, as they call them, the people that approve transactions, the blockchain pays the miners as a motivator. So you guys probably want to know what a miner is. I'm going to show you a little visual here that probably shows you, gets you a more simple visual of this. Okay, so let's just pretend that Nikki and I, and by the way, this is the first time I've given this presentation. I designed this specifically at Nikki's request, and because she's awesome, and I enjoyed putting it together. But I know that it's difficult stuff for your first time around. You're going to get this eventually. Don't worry. The visuals will help. But imagine Nikki and I are doing a transaction. It could be a real estate transaction. It could be something very simple. It could be a service. It could be anything. The requested transaction between Nikki and I is then broadcast to a peer-to-peer network consisting of computers known as nodes. Okay? Now, somebody, and I mentioned this in the last slide, somebody has to approve of the transaction that Nikki and I have put together and designed before it can be added to the blockchain, the data chain. So the miners will, the people that have miner status will essentially validate those transactions, and once it's verified, it can involve cryptocurrency. It doesn't have to. And so that's the big point that I was making earlier, is that blockchain doesn't need cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency needs blockchain. Okay, blockchain doesn't have to involve cryptocurrencies at all. Nikki and I could just be transacting poems. I'm selling her my poem for her poem, and here's the data that speaks to our agreement. Okay, now all of that, once it's verified, it's added and combined with any other transactions we had leading up to it to create a new block of data for the ledger. Okay, now that ledger is a public ledger. So Nikki doesn't just have a contract and I don't have a contract. Everybody on the network has a copy of that contract. So Nikki can't change something at 6 o'clock in the morning when I'm not awake. And I know she would, because my poetry is awesome. And I can't change anything. So we have this secure public ledger of a transaction, and there's no going back. The note down here says that the new block is added to the existing blockchain in a way that is permanent and unalterable. Okay, that's what I mean by Nikki can't change it. If Nikki and I decide we want to make a change, we'll make a new transaction, amending the change, adding to the blockchain. That'll now be public ledger. That'll now have to be approved and verified. So let's look over here at the cryptocurrency part on the right. It says cryptocurrency has no intrinsic value in that it is not redeemable for another commodity such as gold. Well, that's true and not true. I'm not going to go too far into that, but it doesn't have intrinsic value in the sense that we understand it, not in the sense of having a few bucks in your pocket, a few USD. Has no physical form and exists only in the network, that's true, and its supply is not determined by a central bank, and the network is completely decentralized. That's true. Okay, so again, we keep seeing that word decentralized, and now you see secure, you see unalterable, you see privacy, and you see decentralized. You're going to keep seeing those words because those are the key words behind cryptoeconomics, the key words behind cryptocurrencies and blockchain. I had a client. By the way, as far as Q&A, because of the microphone and because we are recording this, I'm going to hold Q&A till the end, and I'll be able to walk around with a microphone so that we can record everyone's questions. And it's probably, with this group size, it's probably the best way to do it. Just write your questions down, though, and we'll get to as many as we can, and I'll also stay after class if something's really burning. You got to ask. I have a client that talked to me about Bitcoin. And he said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well," and I was a little more seasoned at this point. I had done my research, and it was more of a mature entity as well. And I said, "Well, listen, as far as a investment, we're talking about something that really defies our understandings of what a currency is." And I have some quotes later from some famous people that you guys will see that speaks to this. But a currency shouldn't trade like it's the next hot tech stock, right? You shouldn't see a currency with that type of volatility. And even though we do see currencies that bounce around from smaller countries or currency manipulators sometimes, we don't see it to the degree, we shouldn't see it to the degree of a volatile tech stock. And that's what we see with these cryptocurrencies. So they're not behaving like currencies as we've always known them. Right? How would you like it if you're about to go, and I just got back into the country, but I was in Hong Kong and Bangkok. Can you imagine if my U.S. dollars suddenly were worth 50% less while I was traveling? I would be livid. Timing of my trip. But that's what you don't really want that in a currency. And certainly cryptocurrency holders don't want that either when it hits them on the downside, unless they're shorting the market, right? So I just want you to know a lot of the things we're discussing today are kind of defying common standards, beliefs, and understandings. The top 10 cryptocurrencies by market cap. These are some examples of cryptocurrencies, and these are pretty up to date. I updated it just yesterday. These are the market caps. As you can see, Bitcoin, the top. The original, Satoshi's creation, is obviously worth way more than the others, and it has a market cap higher than Coca-Cola and in line with McDonald's and things like that. So it's got a big market cap, but it's not big enough. And if you add all those up, it still doesn't have a market cap that's big enough. Where I get really scared at night about the volatility of the market. Because it's not like it rivals the S&P 500 in market cap. Hopefully it never will. But if you go through these market caps, you see that these are big numbers still. And they're different coins. Each cryptocurrency there's something new, different, maybe redundant to another one, but each one has a niche, sometimes broad, sometimes more narrow. And if you look at some of these notes I made, you'll see underneath Bitcoin, you'll see Ethereum. And the second biggest, and its blockchain is actually programmable, where you can actually build applications on top of the blockchain. Programmers love it, and allows for smart contracts for business dealings, and really just application development. And that's something that Bitcoin really didn't allow for when it was first designed. You'll see some other ones go down below. You'll see that one, that Bitcoin Cash. Bitcoin Cash was actually a spin-off that increased the block size to speed up transaction times of the original Bitcoin. And that's been growing quite well. So you see that one, and then you see the one Tether. Look at this one Tether here. One Tether equals $1 US. Okay, according to Tether. Meaning they probably should have some US dollars in reserves if they're going to make that claim that that's how their currency stacks up in terms of value. Now, I believe they've been subpoenaed by the Treasury to receive some audits to make sure that these claims can be substantiated, and I don't think they've been done yet. So that's a cool idea because it would be the first stable currency, cryptocurrency. Actually saying that it's, allowing for the transactions that cryptocurrencies can have, but not having to worry about the up and down volatility of the price, right? So that's a newer concept. But as you'll see, each one of these has a different niche, and this top 10 will not be the same top 10 next week, let alone next month probably, because these are very volatile. And who's in the lead now may not be in the lead tomorrow. I put together a list of quotes from people that I respect, at least in some ways, not always from a financial or political perspective, but they're not just some guy on the street. The only exception to that would be Stephen Colbert. His quote on Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies is, "It's gold for nerds." Okay, I thought that was kind of funny. But aside from that quote, all the other ones have something laden in them that really speak to the power and the future of where Bitcoin could go, of where cryptocurrencies could go, and I think there's maybe some blockchain innuendos here too. Okay, let's start with the negative stuff, okay? And this kind of sounds like me when I first heard about it, when my nephew first asked me about it years ago, and it was less than $100. Well, Warren Buffett, stay away from it. It's a mirage, basically. I'll be honest with you. I followed Buffett for a long time. I'm not entirely sure that after this class, he'll know any more than you guys will about Bitcoin. I'm not sure he's put the time into it. But nonetheless, it is Warren Buffett, and he is a bit of a god, at least in my world. And it's something you need to at least acknowledge that someone smart said that. Okay, why would he say that? Okay. And then that helps you to build from there, because I think you're going to get a lot of negative stuff on Bitcoin. You're going to get a lot of positive stuff on Bitcoin. And I think you're going to end up in the middle. I think you're going to see the good and the bad. All right, Jamie Dimon, also pretty big guy in the financial world. It's a fraud and worse than tulip bulbs. What the heck is he talking about, tulip bulbs? Anybody remember the economic history of the Netherlands in the 1600s and tulip mania? If you don't know what tulip mania is, you probably remember tech mania in 1990s, late 1990s. Remember how you could buy any internet stock and you'd make like a 40% return in 2 weeks? And you could give stock tips to anybody and they could give it to you and you'd all be right, you'd all love each other. That was the tech bubble forming. The tulip bubble in the Netherlands was very similar. Let's say you could get let's say when times are normal, you can buy a tulip bulb for $1. Next week, that tulip bulb is $300. And if it's a yellow tulip, it's $15,000. Okay, so these manias go throughout history. And a lot of people, have come out and said they believe that cryptocurrencies are a new mania, the new mania, and are overhyped. And looking at price charts, you might say that so far they've been right and wrong. Remember, my nephew bought it when it was less than 100. It actually went all the way up to 20 grand. Now, I know people that bought it at 18 and 19,000, and now it's at 6 to 7 grand. So again, it really depends on where you bought it. The mania, if it is mania, it's not over yet. And we don't know if it's reached its peaks. So the jury would be out if it's pure mania. I also don't think that it matters in some ways, because this presentation isn't just about cryptocurrency. It's about isn't about cryptocurrencies as they exist today. It's about cryptocurrencies as they might evolve in the future, and about blockchain technology. So even if today's coins have mania built in, it may not always be a mania. And it's not as simple as tulip bulbs, because there is real value in global business marketplace for cryptocurrency. There's a lot of barriers, but there's a lot of potential value there. Whereas I don't know that there's a lot of potential I don't know that you should be buying $15,000 tulip bulbs. Paul Krugman, New York Times, Bitcoin is evil. That doesn't really help us, but thanks. Steve Forbes, we don't really know how this coin is created. Well, you do, because we talked about it today. I mean, it sounds weird to say how it's created, because this is not the stork bringing the baby to the front step here. This is a very digital world we're talking about. But he says you can't have functional money without a basic transparency, and that is the problem. This is not a very transparent thing. This class, this workshop will really need to be attended more than once if you're just starting your journey, because the transparency is not there. You really have to work to get through this. There's a lot of contradictions that I talked about earlier. There's a lot of breaking of old altruisms, and this is something we're all going to have to get more educated and smarter about. Here's another one, Alex Weber. The important function of a currency is that it has to be generally accepted. It has to be a store of value, and has to be a transaction currency. Bitcoin is only a transaction currency. So in other words, Mr. Weber is basically saying that it's not really a store of value because of its volatility, and it's not generally accepted because not even half of people accept, far less than half of retailers, for example, accept Bitcoin. It's at this point, it really is just a transaction currency, but I'm not sure that it can't be the others. And that's where I think you'll end up in the middle in terms of, is it what Warren Buffett says, a mirage? Or is it something over here on the positive sides, which we'll get to? Ben Bernanke, the Federal Reserve Chairman that really helped save us from the second Great Depression that was upon us in 2008, 2009. Bitcoin is an attempt to replace fiat currency, okay, so that's like dollars, right, and euros, and evade regulation and government intervention. I don't think that's going to be a success. Well, I'm not sure that is the attempt of Bitcoin, and that might have been the attempt of one of the attempts or one of the ideas, but it's certainly not the only attempt. So I think this may have been an old quote, and again, I wonder how much time Chair Bernanke spent researching this stuff. I think a lot of people spoke before they, or if ever, they did the research. Elon Musk, it looks and smells like all the bubbles I have seen throughout history, including my company, Tesla. Yeah, okay, I didn't say that. I am not Bitcoin's Satoshi Nakamoto. So he says he's not, all right, so which means he is, but, okay. So, Milton Friedman, I think this is great because old Friedman said this a long time ago, right? I think the internet is going to be one of the major forces for reducing the role of government. The one thing that's missing, but that will soon be developed, is a reliable e-cash. So Friedman saw something there. He wasn't a dumb guy. You're going to see some conflicting remarks from very smart people, from Nobel Prize winning type minds, okay? Satoshi, who we don't know who it is, with e-currency based on cryptographic proof, without the need to trust a third-party middleman, money can be secure and transactions effortless. That is a big selling point for the currency, and that's what Bernanke, I think, missed as one of the attempts. The head of the U.S. Mint, or sorry, at least one of the heads of the U.S. Mint said that Bitcoin and the ideas behind it will be a disruptor to the traditional notions of currency, and in the end, currency will be better for it. I agree. That's neither a positive or a negative sentiment in terms of, will cryptocurrencies, rise to the top, but it is saying that we're better off with the experiment of it. Bitcoin is a technological tour de force. Bill Gates. He sees something there. The blockchain keeps everyone honest, and a whole layer of banking bureaucracy is removed, lowering costs. Okay, so we just in these quotes alone, we've talked about removing costs and getting rid of a banking middleman or a middleman. These are other things that you can add to those key words we talked about earlier, like decentralization, okay, like digital and virtual. That is very key. Lowering costs and speeding transaction times is two of the biggest goals for the currency. Okay, Al Gore, who almost was president. I think the fact that within the Bitcoin universe, an algorithm replacing the functions of the government is actually pretty cool. I'm a big fan of Bitcoin. And, Ron Paul said that he thinks that the government should leave it alone and let it do its thing and it shouldn't be messed with. So you have politicians who have basically said, Let this thing happen. Let's find a way to work with this. Let's not try to just get in the way of it. Let's not be the old early 1900s bank and government that had to control everything, that had to help us with everything. Okay, so those quotes are very, very, I think, educational in terms of trying to understand where you are when it comes to Bitcoin and crypto economics. Okay, what are the opportunities? We talked about them, but let's go through the words in a key word format. Access. Okay, people without access to digital currency in the form of credit or debit cards can emerge from a cash-only economy. I read somewhere the other day that 30% or more of Kenyans have Bitcoin wallets. I can't imagine that many Americans have that. So that just tells you like the global opportunities and people that don't have access to traditional forms of credit, like credit and debit cards. That tells you like all the different people that can be reached out to. Decentralization. Okay, we talked about this a million times, but again, the economic liberation from all the centralization, cutting out the third-party mediators and cutting the cost and transaction times. That is the biggest goal for a lot of the, I would imagine, for a lot of the founding members of Satoshi Nakamoto, assuming it's more than one person. Fraud. Cryptocurrencies are digital and cannot be counterfeited or reversed arbitrarily by the sender. Remember, Nikki can't change our contract without the two of us making an amendment and adding to the existing blockchain. It can't be done in that sense. There are other frauds that can be done, but that's one of the opportunities. Immediate settlement. Now, for your business, that's important, right? Contracts can be designed and enforced to eliminate third-party approvals, like lawyers and notaries. They can reference external facts and be completed at a future date. Again, saving time and money. Lower fees, because there aren't any transaction fees for utilizing the cryptocurrency exchanges, which is where your Bitcoins are held. You don't have the traditional transaction fees. Identity theft. Okay, so when you use your credit card, the credit card merchant that you give your card to, they use a poll method that basically gives them access to your full credit line and some personal information. The cryptocurrencies, however, use a push mechanism that allows you to transfer exactly the amount of money you want to give the merchant with no further information about yourself. So this is the privacy part of it. Another key word. Universality. Unbound by the exchange rates, interest rates, or other transaction charges of any country, the cryptocurrency can be used at a global level to reduce costs and speed transactions. So it's huge when it comes to international, cross-border, global transactions. Okay, now that seems like that's important in your world, given the amount of foreign buyers in California. That seems like a big thing to me. You're seeing a lot of flexibility. You're seeing a lot of enhancements to your business, to any business, through blockchain technology because of all the things it can do that you can't do today, or that you can do but it takes a lot longer to do it and it's more expensive and it's very frustrating. So you're seeing the future, but we're just not there yet. Okay, and a lot of this is you're seeing a lot of overlap. I have cryptocurrencies as the opportunity, but I'm speaking of blockchain because remember that's the underlying technology. So they're very connected like that. The risks, though, and there are risks. There's a lack of security. There's no safety net or perfect way to protect your Bitcoins from human error, okay, or fiduciary fraud. So if I have a financial advisor that's managing my Bitcoins and he's not a good fiduciary, he could be just like an NFL football player. They could be essentially doing things with my money that I didn't want them to do. So in that sense, it's like any other investment. But in the sense that Nikki and I are doing a transaction, let's say Nikki forgets her password to her Bitcoin wallet, or she loses her phone, which had the password on it. Those Bitcoins are gone forever. And it's happened, and you'll see these horror stories on Google. It's happened many times. People that bought Bitcoin for less than $100 and they wanted to get out when it was trading around $15,000 couldn't find their passwords. And there's no way to get them back unless they can find that piece of paper they wrote it on, or the phone, if they can find their mobile phone that got stolen at Ross because they were checking out some luggage. That happened to me once. If it sounded personal, that's because it actually happened to me once. All right. Increased regulation. While relatively benign guidelines are currently in place, do you guys really think that the government and the bank lobbyists are going to just sit back and let these currencies happen to a large degree? They're already growing in market cap. We already saw 126 billion for Bitcoin. When they suspect that there's a lot of black market illegal activity going on, when they suspect that the consumers are being defrauded, and from a selfish perspective, when the bank lobbyists realize that they don't want someone cutting in on their business, even though some of the banks are saying that they're on board with this, and I'm not sure that they're actually on board with it, but they might be acting like they are because they want to be nice guys. But you need to know that increased regulation is going to happen. And when it happens, certain players are going to get knocked out of the game. Certain valuations are going to go down. Some might go up. Maybe the currencies that play ball with the regulations, maybe they'll stand to go up. Scaling is an issue, right? Because we talked about trying to reduce speeds of transactions. Let's say a real estate transaction done in Bitcoin. Well, that's a problem because blockchain has scalability issues. And, it takes time for these blocks to communicate and for approvals and verifications to happen. And the technology is so new and young that it's not as fast in most cases as just using credit cards, right? It's not even anywhere close. So it's not taking over anytime soon a debit card or a credit card transaction in most cases. Not yet. But that is a problem right now. Lack of applications, that is improving as we speak. And when I say lack of applications, I'm talking about, what else are the cryptocurrencies good for other than just buying a pizza? I remember there was a pizza place in my hometown that actually had a sign outside, one of those old broken down billboards that they probably hadn't used in a few years. And, with letters hanging off, it said, "We accept Bitcoin." And I think at the time, Bitcoin was trading around $100. They were doing it probably for fun. I can't imagine this little pizza joint had some mastermind that knew that Bitcoin was about to take off. But who knows? Maybe there was a trade.